right worshipables, family, friends, and brethren all. It is an absolute honor to stand before you this evening. Tonight is a moment of deep gratitude for me, not simply because I have been entrusted with the privilege of serving as worshipful master, but because of the path that has led us here together. No Mason arrives at this moment alone. We arrive carried by lessons, by labor, and by the steady hands of brothers who walked before us. I begin by offering my heartfelt thanks to our gracious hosts, Mrs. Billy Bradford, the most worthy Grand Matron and head of the Global Order of the Eastern Star. Dr. Kelly O'Malley, the right worthy Grand Secretary, and Brother Mike Berry, the most worthy Grand Patron and well-regarded brother of Federal Lodge No. 1. I'd also like to give my deep appreciation to all the past masters who have mentored me, guided me, and shaped my Masonic journey through their wisdom, patience, and example. Worshipfuls Paul Delinsky, Morgan Kaur, Rob Maxim, Larry Villegas Perez, Larry Von Weigel, Frederick Cheeseborough, Dr. Wayne Burrow, Oscar Vieira, Drew Schneider, Greg Martin, and Brad St. Arnold. You all cast long and honorable shadows, and I am humbled to stand amongst you. You are brothers I deeply respect, men with whom I have walked many years in fellowship, and this moment means more because it is shared with those who helped build me. Thank you. And to the dedicated lodge officers with whom I have labored, I offer my sincere appreciation. It is your capable and willing hands that lighten the weight of our duties and transform obligation into purpose. May we continue to labor together for the sake of brotherhood and for the betterment of Masonry and Federal Lodge No. 1. And to my family, most especially my beautiful better half, Glenda. Thank you for your patience, your strength, and your unwavering support during the many evenings that I have spent in service to the craft. Your love steadies me. Your belief in me strengthens me. And your presence reminds me why this work matters. You are a pillar of our household and a constant source of calm and encouragement. Thank you for putting up with me and for standing with me through this process. I love you. And to the caterers, vendors, and local businesses that bring warmth and fellowship to our gatherings, I offer sincere thanks. In particular, Aris and Raymond Campos of Los Hermanos. Thank you for tonight's meal. Food carries memory, heritage, and identity. Around a shared table, cultures meet, stories are exchanged, and differences are softened. In a world often divided, breaking bread together still reminds us that community is built one conversation at a time. Now, over the past decade, I've learned that a lodge is not defined by ritual alone, nor by titles, nor by the furniture in the east, south, or west, but by the spirit of the men who gather within its walls. We are strengthened not only when we agree, but when we endure challenges, hold fast to our principles, and emerge wiser, stronger, and more united. Every lodge has its seasons. Some seasons test our patience, others strengthen our character, and some, like tonight, remind us of who we truly are, a brotherhood committed to harmony, growth, and and light. Now, those who truly know me understand that I love my city, I love my culture, and I love my fraternity. Now, I was born in Washington, D.C. in the early 80s and raised in Petworth, Northwest, by my mother, a Salvadoran housekeeper, and my father, a Dominican carpenter. They met in Adams Morgan in the 1970s, back when the neighborhood still smelled of pupusas and plátanos and cigarette smoke drifting out of the old Latino restaurants, some of which are still open today. Now, Washington, D.C., back in the 80s and 90s was a very different place. And to keep me out of trouble, my father, he took me with him to countless construction sites. Now, he may have bent a few child labor laws along the way, but he built something far more important in me: a strong work ethic, respect for labor, and an appreciation for precision and craft. I learned early that what you build should last, and how you build matters. And in many ways, that is what called me to Freemasonry. Because we Masons, we are builders, not of stone walls or vaulted ceilings, but of character and conscience and the inner temple of the soul. The stones we shape are our passions. The tools we use are our principles. And the temple we erect is the moral and spiritual edifice within each of us. Now, our story reaches back to the age of Solomon and Hiram, when cedar, wheat, and oil were exchanged for architects, masons, and craftsmen. Yet the true temple that we labor upon is not one of marble or gold, but one of the human spirit. Because Freemasonry is a science of the soul. Now, our earliest written charges may date back to the 1300s, but the age of Freemasonry is not meant to be measured in centuries or dynasties, because our ideals of harmony, duty, and moral refinement, they're as old as humanity itself. But like all things ancient and powerful, Masonry has faced trials. In the 1300s, lodges were watched with suspicion by the crown and the clergy. In the centuries that followed, Masons were tried by the Inquisition. We were branded enemies of the state by dictators and persecuted for the simple act of thinking freely. And even in our modern day, without inquisitors, dictators, or persecuting empires, we still face trials of a quieter kind. Wounded trust, misunderstanding amongst brethren, and the inevitable friction that arises when responding to old wounds through the imperfect lens of human emotion. But despite it all, through the centuries of suspicion, attack, and misunderstanding, we remain like the stone sphinxes on 16th Street, quiet, steady, and unmoved, possessing the dignity of silence and the strength of inner harmony. Where others see secrecy as something to fear, we Masons see it as a test of discretion, humility, and resilience. When inquisitors once demanded to know the purpose of our secrecy, a Mason replied, "The purpose of Masonic secrecy is secrecy itself." And within that simplicity lies a profound truth. Our symbols do not conceal, they preserve. Our silence does not hide, it dignifies. And our teachings are not shouted, they're lived. Now, the deepest reason I love Freemasonry is that I come from a long line of men who dedicated their lives to freedom of thought, freedom of conscience, and freedom of the human spirit. My great-great-grandfather, Eusebio Mansueta, was born in 1823 in Yamasá, on the island of Santo Domingo. He became a military leader in the island's liberation movement. He led guerrilla campaigns and rose to the rank of general, and he helped to liberate the country in 1865, and even served very briefly as president. And he once addressed Congress with sword in hand as a symbol of his commitment to liberty, brotherhood, and enlightenment. Now, it's unclear whether he was a Freemason, but many who labored beside him were, like Juan Pablo Duarte of Constante Unión número 8, and Gregorio Luperón of Logia Restauración número 11, founding fathers of the Dominican Republic, and men who carried within them the light of Lodge and used it to illuminate a nation. And that same spirit lives in my father, Darío Sosa Mansueta, and he fought in the Dominican Civil War in the early 1960s. A quiet man, as many warriors are. And he once told me stories of crossing enemy lines alone to go check on his mother, and of standing up to a commanding officer to stop the unjust execution of a prisoner. And about 10 years ago, I told him that I had become a Freemason, and I was nervous to do so for many reasons. But he smiled, a rare and proud smile, and he said to me, just like your granddad. And that connection, that thread of legacy, of courage and moral duty, the thought of being connected to my family's legacy through the sacred flame of Masonry, it feeds my soul and comforts my spirit. Because Freemasonry is more than ritual. It's more than regalia. It's more than tradition. Freemasonry is an ethical rebellion against darkness. Where authoritarianism divides, Masonry unites. Where masked power dehumanizes, Masonry restores dignity. The authoritarian seeks to exploit weakness in others. The Mason seeks to uplift the brother, to guard his frailties and strengthen his spirit. And when discord arises, even within our own walls, it is the duty of the Mason to become a bridge, not a barrier. A steady hand between differing minds. A quiet thread of harmony woven through places where harmony has frayed. For the true strength of a lodge is not measured by the perfect agreement, but by the brothers who labor to span the distance between misunderstanding and unity. For in bridging these divides, we wage the noblest rebellion of all, the rebellion against darkness, wherever darkness seeks to dwell. And looking forward, I know that worshipful masters are not given easy and simple paths, but I also know that bridges are not built for ease. They're built to bear weight, and that is their purpose. That makes me think about the old Masonic motto that many hands make light work. And like a wise Mason who may or may not be present here this evening once said, we Masons, we walk in each other's shoes. Now those notions, they give me faith that whatever the obstacle, whatever the mission, whatever the goal, we Masons are up for the challenge. We will face it together, and we will build a better tomorrow. Now let this coming Masonic year be one of unity and reflection. Let community ground us in our homes, in our workplaces, and in every interaction where we choose to embody the craft. Let culture uplift us and bind us to an unbroken chain, stretching from the ancient builders to the Enlightenment thinkers, to each of us gathered here tonight. And let this Masonic year be one in which consciousness transforms us into refined versions of ourselves. Let this year teach us that the greatest bridges we build are between who we are and who we are called to become. Together, let us continue this great work, not only as Masons, but as builders of a better world. May we labor in unity, guided by light, bound by brotherhood, and ever mindful that through our actions, the temple of humanity itself is raised. Now, to that end, Merry Christmas. Feliz Navidad. Happy Hanukkah. Happy Kwanzaa. Felix Saturnalia. And a beautiful and peaceful New Year to you all. Thank you, and so mote it be.